You're watching The Legal Breakdown. Glenn, this is a case that we've been watching especially closely, one that led to the resignation of a number of even Trump-appointed officials at the DOJ, and that is Eric Adams' case that is currently pending in front of a judge. The Trump administration is seeking to dismiss the bribery charges against him. There was a hearing today that everybody was looking at. That hearing has just ended. Can you explain what happened?
Yeah, Brian, all eyes were on this one. So a federal court judge named Dale Ho presided over a 90-minute hearing today. Some really interesting things coming out of the hearing. First of all, our viewers might remember that the acting deputy attorney general, one of Donald Trump's former criminal defense attorneys, a guy named Emil Bove, tried to get prosecutor after prosecutor to sign a motion to dismiss Eric Adams' case. But because these prosecutors who take their oath to the rule of law and the Constitution seriously could sense this was a potentially corrupt bargain that had been struck, a corrupt dismissal, 8 prosecutors, career federal prosecutors, resigned rather than sign this apparently corrupt motion to dismiss. So who showed up in court today to represent the Department of Justice? One person only, Emil Bove, right? The acting deputy attorney general. Can I tell you, Brian? Deputy attorney generals don't go to court, but no other prosecutor was willing to sign this motion or show his or her face in support of this, what appears to be a corrupt bargain. And so the hearing took about 90 minutes, and Judge Ho said, be patient with me. This is a very complicated matter. It was apparently a pretty grave atmosphere in that courtroom. And then Judge Ho tried to figure out why in the world Emil Bove wanted to dismiss this criminal public corruption case against the mayor of New York when, according to Bove, it had nothing to do with the evidence, nothing to do with the law. And basically the reporting coming out of the hearing was that Bove said, look, we need Eric Adams to help Donald Trump in his immigration policies. First of all, Brian, when you have a criminal defendant, if you think that criminal defendant can help you or your boss with some political priority or policy,
is that not adequate justification to drop criminal charges, that you can successfully create a quid pro quo? That's not what the judge is going to be looking for?
You took the words right out of my mouth. In fact, it feels kind of bribery-ish, because bribery is nothing more than a government official, like a prosecutor, using his or her official position and power and duties for some kind of personal political gain or for the political gain of your boss. That's the exact opposite of prosecuting without fear or favor. So now, during the course of the hearing, Judge Ho made it clear he was not going to decide the issue today. But I want to zoom in on one thing in particular that may sound good on the surface, but when you scratch beneath the surface of what Bove said, the whole damn thing falls apart. Here's what he said. He said, well, we want Mayor Eric Adams to be able to be part of a federal task force to help support Donald Trump's mass deportation program. And because he has criminal charges hanging over his head, he can't get a security clearance that would allow him to be part of this federal task force and support Donald Trump's immigration efforts. Okay, that may sound good because, look, we want all, federal task force members to be able to have a security clearance, right? Here's the problem. Donald Trump has absolute unfettered authority to grant anybody a security clearance he damn well pleases. Remember how his son-in-law, the first go-round in Trump, 1.0, Jared Kushner couldn't get a security clearance, but somehow magically Donald Trump took care of all that. So, it's absurd to say, even though Donald Trump has the authority to give him a security clearance, he can't get a security clearance. Therefore, we need to dismiss his case so he can become a member of Trump's task force. Scratch beneath the surface, below the surface. None of that makes any sense. What does it sound like? A pretextual explanation that's being offered by Bove to try to, pull the wool over the judge's eyes and push this corrupt dismissal through. And I have a feeling Judge Ho is probably going to take some time with issues like this based on the representations made in court today. And, I will be anxious to see what kind of order he ultimately hands down in this case.
On that last point, was somebody from the other side there to make the case that, in fact, Eric Adams doesn't need to have the charges dropped to be able to get a security clearance? And also, just as a quick side note, it's all well and good that they want him to have a security clearance, whether or not their argument has any weight. But that's not the judge's problem. If Eric Adams is denied a security clearance because he has federal charges hanging above his head, he's not entitled to getting a security clearance. So what does it matter to the judge if he can't be helpful to the Trump administration? He should have thought about that when he was engaging in bribery.
And Brian, doesn't it actually seem that the better course would be to have a mayor of New York City who's not pending a whole bunch of federal public corruption charges in an indictment, and let the next mayor or whoever takes Eric Adams' place get a security clearance? But here's the other thing on the security clearance thing, and then I'll answer your first question. The whole security clearance thing is a bit of a red herring. Why is it that somebody who has pending criminal charges against them can't typically get a security clearance? Because they're potentially could be the subject of blackmail, right? Somebody could pressure them and hold that over their head.
Lo and behold, look at the situation that we're in right now. This is that exact thesis bearing itself out, that now the mayor is completely indebted to, wholly owned by the Trump administration because he knows his freedom is at risk.
Exactly, because Beauvais, the only prosecutor who was willing to appear here, made it clear that this is a dismissal without prejudice. What does it mean? It means those charges are still being held over Eric Adams' head by the Trump administration's Department of Justice. I mean, this whole thing is an absolute clown show on the arguments that are being offered by Trump's Department of Justice henchmen to try to justify what appears to be a corrupt dismissal. Now, going to your first question, was there anybody from the other side? The other side is really the pro-rule of law, pro-justice side. The answer is there are some nonprofit organizations that are trying to enter the fray and assert themselves because, they are there to protect the interest of New Yorkers who really have a dog in this fight. And let me just go back, but the answer is none of those people, according to the reporting, formally appeared and presented any kind of an argument in this case. But let me just circle back to something that Judge Ho said when he set this hearing not 24 hours ago. He said that the court has a role here in deciding whether to grant the motion to dismiss, because a prosecutor can only file a motion to dismiss, but the judge gets to decide whether it should be granted. It's called, you can dismiss with leave of court. That's the precise language of the Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure. And here's what Judge Ho said when he's undertaking this task. He said, this provision that gives the judge the opportunity to decide whether this is a righteous motion that should be dismissed is designed as, quote, a power to check power. That is directly from the judge's order setting today's hearing. What does it mean? It means that the court has the power to check an abuse of executive branch, of DOJ power. An abuse of that power can be addressed by the court. The other thing he said is that ordinarily these motions to dismiss should be granted unless they are clearly contrary to public interest. And boy, this one, getting rid of a significant public corruption prosecution against the sitting mayor of New York for no good reason, that doesn't feel like it's in the public interest for the people of New York. And then the third thing he said is that this whole process, quote, contemplates exposure of the reasons for the dismissal. And that is what Judge Ho went about trying to do today, expose the true reasons for this requested dismissal. And we could have a ruling as early as this evening or tomorrow, or Judge Ho could take some time. He could actually also order further proceedings where he began to call witnesses to the stand and take testimony on this issue. But as of right now, we don't have a sense of procedurally what Judge Ho will now do moving forward.
Okay, well, as you mentioned, all eyes are on this case right now, so we will stay on top of it. As soon as we have any update, we'll bring it to you. For those who are watching right now, if you want to follow along, please make sure to subscribe. Links to both of our channels are right here on the screen. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.